Hello everyone, welcome back to the 1000 MCQ series of Food Safety Officer exam. In today's video, we'll discuss question number from 31 to 40 coming from the nutritional biochemistry section. So without any further delay, let's move on to the first question of the day. So the question is, which of the following statement is true about lipids? A. Lipids are not polymers. So is it true or false? Lipids are not polymers. So we know that the biomolecules like carbohydrate is there, protein is there, nucleic acids are there, lipids are there. In this, carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, they are considered to be polymers. They are polymers and they are made up of monomers. Okay. However, lipid is considered to be a small molecule. Although lipid is made up of fatty acid and alcohol, they are considered to be a small molecule. So lipids are not polymer. This sentence is true. Okay. Now, the second sentence statement, lipids are soluble in chloroform and ether. Yes, lipids are soluble in organic solvents or non-polar solvents. Non-polar solvents like chloroform and ether, they are soluble. However, lipids are insoluble in polar solvents like water. That means the second sentence is also true. The third statement is also true. Let's come to the fourth statement. Lipids are heterogeneous compounds. So lipids, the simple lipids like the fats and oils. Lipids range from a wide range of compounds. The simple fats and oils is a lipid. You go to this complex lipids like phospholipids, glycolipids, even the cholesterol, even the steroid hormones, the bile acids, the ketone bodies. So that means lipids include wide variety of compounds. That means they are heterogeneous compounds. So that means the statement D is also true. So here the question was which of the following statement is true. That means all the four sentences A, B, C, D are true. So the correct answer for this question would be E choice, all of the above. Let's move on to the second question of the day. Which of the following is a complex lipid? A. Waxes. B. Oils. C. Lecithin. D. Sphingosine. And E. All of the above. So the first thing we need to know the classification of lipids. So basically lipids can be classified into three categories. One is simple lipid. The second one is called as a complex lipid. Complex lipid is also called as compound lipids. And the third one is called as derived lipids, which is also called as precursor lipids. Precursor lipids. Okay, so what do you mean by simple lipid? As the word indicates that simple lipids are basically esters of fatty acid and alcohol. They are esters of fatty acids and alcohol. Whereas in complex lipid, they are esters of fatty acid plus alcohol. Also, they contain some additional substance. They contain some additional groups, additional compounds. Okay, so that makes them different from the simple lipid. Complex, as the name indicates, they are compound, they are complex. So apart from the fatty acid and alcohol, they contain some additional groups. Which are the additional group? We'll come to that. Now, derived lipids are also called as precursor lipids because these derived lipids are they are derived from other lipids. They are derived from other lipids compounds. Okay, sometimes some of this lipids are also precursor for other lipids, so that is why the precursor lipids, they can also be called as precursor lipids. We'll come to that, which are the examples for that. Now that is the basic difference between simple, complex and derived. Now coming to the simple lipids we can classify into two categories. One is the fats and oils, and the second one is waxes. Fats and oils and waxes. Now the difference between fats and oil and waxes. Here, as I already told, simple lipids contain fatty acid and alcohol, right? Fatty acid and alcohol. Now, if this alcohol part is glycerol, if the alcohol part is glycerol, then that is called as fats and oils. Whereas in waxes, the alcohol is not the glycerol. Any alcohol other than glycerol, any alcohol other than glycerol. For example, one of the common alcohol in waxes is cetyl alcohol, okay, or the sphingosine. So these are the alcohols present in waxes, not the glycerol. Glycerol is present mainly in the fats and oils, whereas in waxes it is either cetyl alcohol or sphingosine, and the most commonly seen alcohol is cetyl alcohol. Okay, so that is the primary difference between fats and oils and waxes. Okay, between fats, oils, and waxes. Now the example for fats and oils, they are actually the triacyl glycerols or the neutral fat. That is a common example for the fats and oils. You know a lot of example. Now, what is the main difference between fat and oil? Are they same? No. So at a room temperature, if it is solid, we'll call them as fat. But if at room temperature, if it is liquid, we will call them as oil. So that is the difference between fats and oils. So they come under simple lipid category. The alcohol present is glycerol only. But the difference between fat and oil is that at a room temperature, fat behave as solid, but oil will be as liquid. Okay. So that is a simple lipid like fats and oils. Now waxes, I already told the alcohol is either cetyl alcohol or sphingosine. And the examples you need to remember, one is lanolin. Lanolin is also called as wool fat. Wool fat, also called as lanolin, is a wax. Another example is beeswax. Beeswax, that means the alcohol is cetyl alcohol. Another example is ceramide. Ceramide is considered to be a wax. Okay, and the alcohol is sphingosine. Okay, so these are the difference between fats, oils, and waxes. So the alcohol and it is a ester of simple lipid is a combination of or is a ester of fatty acid and alcohol. The alcohol will be varying between fats, oils, and waxes. Okay, so that is all about simple lipid. Now coming to complex lipid. So I told you in simple lipids there will be fatty acid. It is an ester of fatty acid and alcohol. Now, in complex lipid, apart from that, some additional groups are there, some additional compounds, some additional groups are there. Okay, so that is the difference between simple lipid and complex lipid. In complex lipid or compound lipids, some additional groups are present apart from the fatty acids and alcohol. For example, if this additional group is phosphate, phosphoric acid, or phosphate, we will call them as phospholipid. We will call them as phospholipid. If this additional group is a carbohydrate, carbs or carbohydrates, we will call them as glycolipids. If the additional group is sulfate, if the additional group is sulfate, we'll call them as sulfolipids. And whereas lipoproteins is also a complex lipid, which is a combination of lipids and proteins. It's a complex of macromolecular complex of lipids and proteins. Okay, so that is the difference between phospholipid, glycolipids, sulfolipids, and lipoproteins. The additional groups differs. Okay, and some of the examples also you need to remember for phospholipids. Phospholipids, the examples are lecithin. Lecithin is an example of phospholipid. It contains phosphate. Then cephalin. Then sphingomyelin. Sphingomyelin. Then cardiolipin. So these are examples for phospholipids. So in phospholipids, apart from the fatty acids and alcohol, it contains additional groups like phosphate. Also, it contains nitrogenous base. Nitrogenous base. Nitrogenous bases. Okay, so that is the important things you need to remember with phospholipids. Now coming to glycolipids, it contains carbohydrate. Additional group is carbohydrate plus it contains nitrogenous base. Okay, apart from the fatty acid and alcohol, it contains carbohydrate and nitrogenous base. And the example in glycolipid you need to remember is cerebroside, and ganglioside. Okay, so they come under the category of glycolipid. Whereas sulfolipids, as I already told, the additional group is sulfate, and the example is sulfated cerebroside and sulfate glycoside. Okay, so this the sulfated part of cerebroside and sulfated part of ganglioside is an example for what? Sulfolipids. Whereas if you look at lipoproteins, I told you it's a combination of lipids and proteins. The examples are LDL, low density lipoprotein, high density lipoprotein, very low density lipoprotein is there. So these are actually a complex of lipids and protein. They come under the complex lipid, especially lipoprotein category. Okay, so this is all about complex lipid you need to remember. Now the third category I told you, simple lipids are there, complex lipids are there, then derived lipids and the precursor lipids. Okay, so here the important thing you need to remember, why it is called as precursor lipids, because some of this lipids act as a precursor for other lipids. For example, lipids, I told you it is made up of fatty acids and alcohol like glycerol. Like, so this fatty acid and alcohol, they can act as precursors for the lipids. So they are called as precursor lipids. Okay. Now you look at the lipid soluble vitamins like A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. They are basically derived from the lipid. The steroid hormones, they are derived from the lipids. Cholesterol, they are derived from the lipids. Bile acid is derived from the lipids. Prostaglandins, ketone bodies, leukotrienes. So basically, all these are derived from the lipids. Okay, so they come under the category derived lipids. That means they are derived from other lipids. So the example are steroid hormones, what lipid soluble vitamins like A, D, E, K, bile acids, cholesterol, prostaglandins, leukotrienes, ketone bodies, wide variety of compounds. That's why we told lipids are heterogeneous in nature, heterogeneous compounds. So that is the point you need to remember with the simple lipid, complex lipid, derived lipids. So coming back to your question, which of the following is a complex lipid? Okay, so waxes is a simple lipid. Oils are simple lipid. Lecithin, yes, we studied in phospholipid category. So this is actually a complex lipid. And sphingosine is an alcohol. Sphingosine is basically an alcohol. So the correct answer for this question is the example for complex lipid, lecithin is the answer. C choice. Okay, let's move on to the next question of the day. Which of the following is not a function of lipid? Okay, so we need to know the important function of lipids. Okay, so lipids are a very important source of energy. It's a very important source of energy. So that is why it is called as the fuel reserve of our body. Fuel reserve of our body. It serves as a storage form of energy. For example, the fuel reserve is triacyl glycerol, the neutral fat. That is a fuel reserve of the body. Okay. Now, lipids are also important for the structural component of biological membranes. For example, phospholipids. You take the cell membrane, cholesterol. Okay, phospholipids. They are present in this biological membranes. Okay, so they form a part of this biological membrane. Examples are phospholipids, cholesterol. Okay. Now, they are, I already told you, they are source of fat soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. They are also important cellular metabolic regulators. For example, steroid hormones, the prostaglandins, they are basically metabolic regulators. They are actually derived lipids only. Okay, so they are important cellular metabolic regulator. That is also a function. Now it protects the internal organs. Lipids helps to protect the internal organ. That means it has a cushioning effect. So lipids basically helps to protect this internal organ. That effect is called as cushion effect. Cushion effect. When you sit in a chair or in a sofa, you will have a cushion effect, right? So just like that, the lipid present in our body have a cushioning effect. Okay, it protects the internal organs. Now, it's already you know that whenever you put oil or fats and this thing, it will increase the taste. It will increase the palatability of the food. Okay, altogether, we all love to take oiled foods and all this. So basically, it increases the taste and palatability of the food. Now, it also gives shape and smooth appearances to the body. Okay, the smooth surfaces of the skin is all contributed by the lipids. Okay, it also acts as surfactant, detergents, and emulsifying agents. Okay, so that is also one function of lipid. It is also it provides insulation. That is also an important function of lipid, because you know that the subcutaneous fat in our body, right? The subcutaneous fat in our body helps to regulate the temperature in our body. Okay, whenever you go to a colder places or still your body temperature would be maintained. Why? Because you have the subcutaneous fat. Okay, so that is why that means it provides an insulation against the changes in the external temperature. So these are the important function of a lipid. Now let's come back to our question: which of the following is not a function of a lipid? So A choice: lipids give shape and smooth appearance of the body. It's true, it's correct only. It gives the shape and smooth appearance of the body. They are part of biological membrane. I told you phospholipids, cholesterol. Lipids serve as a fuel reserve of the body, storage form of the energy. Then lipids serve as an insulating material. So that means all these are function of the lipid. Here the question was not a function. Okay, so all these are functions. So the correct answer would be E choice, none of the above. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Which of the following is an unsaturated fatty acid? A choice: palmitic, B arachidonic, C myristic, D arachidic, E all of the above. So I already told you lipids are made up of fatty acids and alcohol, right? Fatty acids and alcohol are the main precursors for lipid. Now this fatty acids will vary based on the structure. So in simple word, you can tell that a fatty acid is a alkyl group containing carboxylic acid. Now this alkyl, this R group contains sometimes only single bonds, CH2, CC single bonds. If it contains only single bond, they are called as saturated fatty acid. Okay. So fatty acid, if it contains only single bond, carbon-carbon single bond, they are called as saturated fatty acid. But if you look at some of the fatty acid, it contains carbon-carbon double bonds, carbon-carbon double bonds, maybe one time, twice, thrice, and all that. So those fatty acids are called as unsaturated fatty acid. Okay. So in saturated fatty acid, only single bond is there, but in unsaturated fatty acid, there is double bond is there. Okay. So that is the first difference you need to know between saturated fatty acid and unsaturated fatty acid. Normally, you know that in the food items we normally prefer unsaturated fatty acids. Okay, it is more good for your health and all that. Unsaturated fatty acid, omega fatty acids, and all that you have heard. So that this is more healthier. Okay, unsaturated fatty acids are more healthier compared to the saturated fatty acid. Now let us look at the examples of saturated and unsaturated fatty acid. Okay, so butyric acid is a saturated fatty acid. Valeric acid is a saturated fatty acid. Okay, now the difference here, the number of carbons, you need to know the number of carbon atoms also. Okay, so number of carbon atoms in each of this fatty acid also you need to remember. For example, in butyric acid, it is a 4 carbon containing fatty acid. Valeric acid is a 5 carbon containing fatty acid, saturated fatty acid. Caproic acid, the number of carbon is 6. Caprilic acid, the number of carbon is 8. Capric acid, the number of carbon is, so basically they are all saturated fatty. Examples for saturated fatty acid. Lauric acid, it is 12. Lauric acid is a saturated fatty acid. Myristic acid, the number of carbon is 14. Palmitic acid, the number of carbon atom is 16. Stearic acid is also a saturated fatty acid. The number of carbon atom is 18. Whereas arachidic acid, the carbon atom is 20. Okay, so 20 carbon fatty acid is also called as icosanoids. Icosanoids. 20 carbon saturated fatty acids are also called as icosanoids. If you take behenic acid, that is also a saturated fatty acid, the number of carbon atom is 22. Lignoceric acid, the answer is 24. So they are all examples for saturated fatty acid. If you look at very carefully, they are mostly even carbon compound, even 2, 4, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. They are mostly even carbon fatty acids. Mostly the saturated fatty acids are even carbon. Okay. But however, valeric acid is a odd carbon fatty acid. Odd carbon fatty acid. Okay. So these are examples for saturated fatty acid. Sometimes the question will come a 16 carbon fatty acid. Saturate. Give an example for a 16 carbon fatty acid. What would be your answer? Yes, palmitic acid. Is 18 carbon saturated fatty acid. What should be your answer? Yes, stearic acid. Okay. So that is the point you need to remember from the examples of saturated fatty acid. Now you come to unsaturated fatty acid. I told you there will be carbon-carbon double bond. Unsaturation would be there. Okay. So the examples are palmitoleic acid. So the number of double bonds, carbon double bonds, you need to remember palmitoleic, the number of double bond is one. One double bond is there. You take oleic acid, the number of double bond is also here. Also it is one. Whereas linoleic acid, the number of double bond is two. Linolenic acid, the number of double bond is three. Arachidonic acid, the number of double bond is four. Okay. So these are examples for unsaturated fatty acid. You can remember this mnemonic POLLA. Okay, POLLA. They are examples for unsaturated fatty acid. Now, if you look at palmitoleic acid and oleic acid, it contain only one double bond, so it can be also called as mono unsaturation. Mono, one double bond. So mono unsaturated fatty acid, abbreviated as MUFA. Okay. Whereas linoleic acid, linolenic acid, arachidonic acid, they contain multiple double, 2, 3, 4, right? So they are also called as polyunsaturated fatty acid, abbreviated as PUFA. So linoleic, linolenic, arachidonic, they are examples for PUFA, polyunsaturated fatty acid. Okay, so these are the examples for unsaturated fatty acid. Now, one more point you need to remember: linoleic acid, linolenic acid, arachidonic acid. These three fatty acids, they are not synthesized by our body. They are not synthesized by our body. That means we need to take it through the diet. Okay, so since it is not produced by our body and we need to take it through the diet, these three fatty acids like linoleic, linolenic, and arachidonic are also called as essential fatty acids. Essential fatty acid, abbreviated as EFA. Okay, so the examples for essential fatty acid, that means it is not produced in our body. The examples are linoleic, linolenic, and arachidonic. So can I say that all essential fatty acids are polyunsaturated fatty acids? Okay, yes, it is true. All essential fatty acids, okay, because it contains more than two or more double bonds. Okay, linoleic, linolenic, arachidonic. So all essential fatty acids are polyunsaturated fatty acids. This point also you can remember. Okay, so this is all about the classification of fatty acid based on the chemistry, saturated and unsaturated. Now coming back to your question, which of the following is an unsaturated fatty acid? Okay, so palmitic acid is a saturated fatty acid. Arachidonic acid is unsaturated fatty acid. Okay, unsaturated fatty acid. Myristic acid, arachidic acid, all these are saturated only. So the correct answer for the unsaturated fatty acid, the answer is B choice, arachidonic acid. Okay, remember arachidic acid is a saturated fatty acid. Arachidic acid is a saturated fatty acid. We have told that 20 carbon fatty acid. Okay, so arachidic acid is saturated. Arachidonic is unsaturated fatty acid. Now coming to our next question, which of the following is not an essential fatty acid? We have already told the examples for essential fatty acids, right? Essential fatty. Here the question is not an essential fatty acid. So linoleic is essential fatty acid, linolenic is essential fatty acid, arachidonic is essential fatty acid. So which is not an essential fatty acid? Yes, the answer is A choice. Oleic acid. They are not essential. Although they are unsaturated fatty acid, they are not essential. They are produced in our body. Okay. However, linoleic, linolenic, and arachidonic are essential fatty acid. They are not produced in our body. We have to take it to the diet. Okay. Now coming back to the next question of the day. Which of the following statement is false? A. Deficiency of essential fatty acid causes toad skin. Essential fatty acids are helps in the prevention of fatty liver. C choice. All essential fatty acids are PUFA. As we told that all essential fatty acids are polyunsaturated fatty acid. That is a true sentence only. We already know that. Beta hydroxybutyrate. Let's come to that. This choice. Okay. For the first thing, so this question is all about essential fatty acids, right? So we know that linoleic acid, linolenic acid, arachidonic acid, they are examples for essential fatty acid. Now I told you we have to take it through the diet, and now why it is so important? Because essential fatty acids helps in the membrane structure. It helps to in the function of the membranes. It also helps in the transport of cholesterol. It helps to prevent in the prevention of fatty liver. It also helps in the formation of lipoproteins. So these means it is very much important for our biological function, structure, membrane function, cholesterol transport, prevention of fatty liver. A lot of good functions are there. Okay, so whenever it is deficient, it can result in some of these problems like deficiency of this essential fatty acid can cause phrinoderma, skin related issue. Okay, eruptions in the skin. It is also called as a toad skin. So the skin will look like a toad. Okay, then eruptions will be there. Horny eruptions would be there. So that is due to the deficiency of this linolenic and arachidonic, which is an essential fatty acid. If essential fatty acid is deficient, it can result in loss of hair. It is called as alopecia. Alopecia means loss of hair. Okay, so deficiency of essential fatty acid can result in alopecia. Deficiency can also result in the poor wound healing. Okay, so these are the problems which can occur when essential fatty acid is deficient in a person. Okay, skin related issue, hair related issue, poor wound healing. Okay, now coming back to your question. So the question was which is false, which statement is false. So let us take the A sentence. Deficiency of essential fatty acid cause toad skin. Yes, it is true only. We have told that. Now essential fatty acid, yes, helps to prevent the fatty liver. True. Now, beta hydroxybutyric acid, remember, it is an example for beta hydroxybutyric acid is an example for hydroxy fatty acid. That means that statement D is also true. So, which is the correct answer? All the four sentences are true. So, it is none of the above, E choice. Okay. Now, coming to the next question, which of the following is an omega-3 fatty acid? Okay, so omega is represented by this symbol. Omega is given to a carbon atom which is away from the functional group. So there is a different nomenclature, omega. Okay, now this oleic acid is called as omega-9 fatty acid. Omega-9 fatty acid. Linoleic acid is considered to be omega-6 fatty acid. Linolenic acid is considered to be omega-3 fatty acid. Arachidonic acid is considered to be omega-6 fatty acid. So based on the, actually this omega-3 numbering is based on the chemistry, the position of the double bond and all that. You don't need to remember those things. You just remember omega, which is the which fatty acid is called as omega-9, which fatty acid is called as omega-6, omega-3, omega-6. Okay, so this is all about the unsaturated fatty acid with the nomenclature omega. Okay, so oleic acid is called as omega-9 and the omega-3 fatty acid, the correct answer for this question is linolenic acid is omega-3. Okay. C choice. So suppose the question is omega-6, you have two answers, linoleic acid and arachidonic. Linoleic acid and arachidonic are examples for omega-6. Suppose if it is omega-9, the answer is oleic acid. Okay, so that is the answer. Now let's come to the next question of the day. The most abundant fatty acid, the most abundant fatty acid in coconut oil. Saturated, A choice, saturated fatty acid. B, MUFA, mono unsaturated fatty acid. C, PUFA, polyunsaturated fatty acid. D, all fatty acid are in same amount. Now remember, in coconut oil, the most abundant fatty acid is saturated fatty acid, which is 86%. So if you take coconut oil, 86% of fatty acids are saturated. Whereas this mono unsaturated fatty acids, okay, like oleic acid, palmitoleic, the percentage is 12%. Whereas the polyunsaturated fatty acids, the essential fatty acid, the percentage is 2%. Okay, so this is the constant or the amount of saturated, monounsaturated, and the polyunsaturated. So among this, can you tell me which is most abundant? Yes, the answer is A choice. Saturated fatty acid is most abundant. Okay. Now coming to the next question, lecithin. Okay, so you know that lecithin is an example for phospholipid because it contains apart from the fatty acid and alcohol, it contains nitrogenous base and phosphate group. They are example for phospholipids. Now lecithin is also called as phosphatidyl-choline. Choline is the nitrogenous base present in there, whereas cephalin is also called as phosphatidyl-ethanolamine. Cephalin. Okay, so lecithin, cephalin are all examples for phospholipid. Okay, so cephalin, phosphatidyl-ethanolamine, whereas diphosphatidylglycerol glycerol is also called as cardiolipid. If you remember, all this lecithin, cephalin, cardiolipins, they comes under which category? Yes, phospholipid category. Okay, so you can remember the other name of lecithin, cephalin, and cardiolipid. Okay, so that is the correct answer for this question. Lecithin is phosphatidylcholine. Choice A. Let's move to the last question of the day. Which of the following is a wax? It's a simple question. So triacylglycerol, it's also called as a neutral fat. It is basically comes under the fats and oils. Okay, fats and oils category. Lecithin is an example for a phospholipid. Sphingomyelin comes under the phospholipid category. I told you zeramide is an example for wax. Okay, so the correct answer for this question is choice D. Okay, so hope you understood this discussion session. and keep on watching our video. And if you are interested to join our MCQ test series for food safety officer exam, do download our application or contact our number called as 8891420476, or download our application. You will be having a food safety officer MCQ test series. Okay, so keep on watching. Thank you. See you with a new video. Thank you so much.